Have you ever pondered on the dual feeling of belonging to two distinct cultures while being rejected by both? The fusion of two cultures, Mexican and Caucasian, ought to weave a beautiful tapestry of varied threads. However, my experience resembled a jigsaw puzzle with ill-fitting pieces. My father's Mexican heritage and my mother's Irish-German roots painted a canvas of multicultural affluence. Nevertheless, the reality was a stark contrast from this idyllic image. In my upbringing, the family on my mother's side, especially my grandfather, served as a continuous reminder of my blended heritage. A man of intense prejudices, my grandfather had a profound loathing for all other races but his own. He hurled derogatory remarks about Mexicans, accusing them of being dirty, ruining neighborhoods, and insisted they had no place in our country. His words were always tinted with pity for me, for having a Mexican lineage. His attempts to persuade me to sever ties with my Mexican background were relentless, often arguing that I was fortunate to appear white. Any missteps I made, my family attributed it to the Mexican blood in me. Their presence and my family's words were not joyous acknowledgments of cultural diversity. Instead, they were veiled in passive-aggressive racist comments and mockery. It felt as though my ethnicity was a punchline rather than an inherent part of my identity. This constant undercurrent of racism was not a school of culture, but a school of ridicule. Even mundane activities, such as cooking enchiladas from a recipe that I found on the back of an enchilada sauce can, were transformed into a racial stereotype. A compliment for my culinary skills was swiftly equated to, well, she should be good at making Mexican food, she's a Mexican. Once someone brought a quiche with jalapenos to potluck brunch, haven't any clue of my ethnicity. My sister, thinking she is being funny, whispered to me, "They made that special for you because they know you're Mexican." My mom would leave voicemails with comments like, "I met my Mexican neighbor, and it made me think of you." The irony? I wasn't raised in a Mexican household. My father, a figure from whom I could have learned about my Mexican heritage, was absent. The linkage to my Mexican roots remained unexplored, like a book in a language I couldn't read. It was only in my late teens, after my mother's brother's physically violent racist attack against me that put me in the hospital, is when I sought out my paternal grandmother. She received me warmly, sheltered me, and showed me love along with another way of life and family dynamics. But our time was limited, and many chapters of my cultural identity remained unopened. The ordeal of straddling between two cultures was further compounded by my appearance. My mixed heritage resulted in a light skin tone, making me appear fully Caucasian. I tried to fit in, with the hopes to learn vicariously through my Mexican peers, only to have them ridicule me as a white girl trying to be Mexican. Conversely, my mother's other children, my half-siblings, with their straight blonde hair and blue eyes, underlined my dissimilarity even more. Being a part of two cultures should be a source of richness, but in my case, it felt more like a perilous walk on a tightrope. I wonder, how far would you go to connect with your roots, especially when they seem so distant? There's a certain pull, an unexplainable allure that our cultural roots exert. For me, it was the Mexican side of my family tree, an area that remained largely unexplored due to my father's absence. He was a figure, a silhouette that never truly materialized into the father figure that I craved, a missing piece in the jigsaw puzzle of my identity. With time, the ever-fleeting thief, the bond I had began to create with my grandma was cut short, and my sole link to my Mexican heritage seemed to vanish. Yet the desire to connect was still powerful. I yearned to learn more, to immerse myself in the culture that was as much a part of me as the blood coursing through my veins. It was not a path strewn with rose petals. It was a journey riddled with obstacles, a road less traveled. When I reached my 30s, with the rise of social media, I was able to locate and reach out to my paternal family. I was soon invited to family gatherings, which were overwhelming, a cacophony of unfamiliar faces. There were so many. This too brought an emptiness. I didn't know where to begin or how to adjust. I think they wanted me to just jump in with 2 feet, but they were all strangers. Seeing how tightly bonded my huge family was, I became sad for my childhood and the little girl in me, and I began to feel sorry for myself. I could have been surrounded by all of this love. Why didn't my father want me or love me? And why did he keep me hidden and separate from our family? Why didn't my first cousins even know that I existed? Only a small handful, if that, knew of my presence in this world. My lighter skin tone, a mirror of my mixed heritage, made me stick out like a sore thumb. Yet I was determined to bridge the chasm, to find my place amongst them, to be a part of the family tapestry. I didn't want to just live vicariously through the experiences of others. I was seeking my own experiences, my own connections. I was searching for the missing pieces of my identity, the fragments of my Mexican heritage that would complete the picture of who I was and where I came from. In closing, the longing to understand and connect with my roots was a journey filled with both hope and heartbreak. Do appearances define who we are? Can we truly understand someone's cultural identity just by their looks? These are questions have haunted me for years. I've always found myself caught in the middle, struggling to find acceptance in the very circles I should naturally belong to. Imagine this. I walk into a family gathering, a room filled with familiar faces, yet I feel like an alien. The sea of light skin contrasts sharply with my own, a blend of both my heritages. I often find myself thinking about my paternal grandmother, a woman of vivid spirit and Mexican roots. Her stories of her youth in Mexico served as the bridge to my Mexican heritage. From her, I learned the language, and the rich traditions of a culture that was part of my DNA, yet felt so distant because of the way others perceived me. Conversations flow around me, but I find myself drowning in a sense otherness, my skin color creating an unspoken barrier. Then there was the struggle of trying to befriend my Mexican peers. I looked and acted white, they said. To them, my appearance was a contradiction to my heritage. They saw my skin, my mannerisms, and they labeled me a wannabe. The ridicule was harsh and unrelenting. I was caught in a tug-of-war between two worlds, both rejecting me for not fitting into their narrow definitions of identity. But what is identity? Is it our skin color, the language we speak, the food we eat, or what we follow? Or is it something more profound, something that transcends these superficial markers? I was Mexican and was white. I was both, yet to the world, I was neither. I was trapped in a limbo, a no-man's land of cultural identity. My hair, a deep dark brown, not quite black but still darker than most brunettes, and naturally curly, became a symbol of my difference. My dark green eyes, a gift from on my father's side, were another reminder of my mixed heritage. These features, instead of being celebrated as a beautiful blend of two cultures, became barriers, keeping me from feeling truly accepted. The color of my skin and the texture of my hair became barriers, keeping me from feeling truly accepted. Should it be this way? Should we let appearances define us? Or should we strive to understand the rich tapestry of experiences and cultures that make us who we are? Who can be a victim of racism? Is it exclusive to a specific race or ethnicity? These questions may seem simple, but in reality, they're much more complex than they appear. In my own journey, I've come face to face with the bitter truth that racism isn't exclusive to any one color or creed. It's a pervasive issue that transcends borders, cultures, and ethnicities. You see, I've been on the receiving end of racist comments and behaviors from both sides of my mixed heritage. Being of both Mexican and white descent, I've experienced racism from both ethnicities. I've been reminded of my otherness in my own family, where subtle, passive-aggressive racist jokes were the norm. And it wasn't just within the confines of my family home. I faced ridicule and rejection from my Mexican peers who saw me as too white, as well as from those who saw me as too Mexican. To add to that complexity, I didn't meet the rest of my dad's side of the family until my 30s. The result? A sense of confusion, of not knowing where I fit in, a sense of feeling like an outsider in every community I tried to be a part of. This isn't a unique experience. Many people of mixed heritage can attest to feeling like they're perpetually stuck in a no-man's land, not fully accepted by either side of their roots. The notion that only white people can be racist is a myth. Racism is not confined to a single race or ethnicity. It's an ugly, pervasive issue that can affect anyone, regardless of their skin color or cultural background. In my case, the racism I experienced from both sides of my family and peers left me feeling like an orphan, finding my own way in a world that seemed to have no place for me. Yet, despite these experiences, or perhaps because of them, I've become more open to understanding and respecting all cultures and skin tones. So let's remember that racism isn't a white problem, or a black problem, or a brown problem. It's a human problem, and it's a problem that we must all work together to solve. Racism, as I experienced, knows no color, It's a harsh reality that many of us still grapple with. How can we turn our painful experiences into lessons of understanding and respect? This is a question that sits at the heart of our conversation today. Our personal narratives, filled with triumphs and trials, can teach us invaluable lessons about empathy, respect, and cultural appreciation. As a person of mixed heritage, having been subjected to both passive and aggressive forms of racism, I've learned that understanding and respect for all cultures and skin tones is paramount. It's not about erasing culture or denying our origins. It's about appreciating the beauty that lies within every culture's history. We all have a role to play in creating a world that celebrates diversity and stands against racism. It starts with acknowledging our unique experiences and then using them as a stepping stone to foster empathy and understanding. Our stories are not just about us, they are also tools for educating others, for sparking conversations about race and culture that go beyond the surface. And it's not just about talking, it's about listening too. Listening to the experiences of others, hearing their stories, and learning from them. It's about broadening our horizons and embracing the rich tapestry of cultures that make up our world. It's important to address these subjects openly and honestly, without fear or bias. Racism isn't a problem confined to one race or one culture. It's a human problem that requires a human solution, and that solution starts with education, understanding, and respect. We must also remember that it's not enough to simply stand against racism. We must actively work towards its eradication. It's about challenging our biases, recognizing our privileges, and using our voices to champion equality and justice. From my journey, I've learned to appreciate diversity and fight against racism. And now I encourage you to do the same. Stand against racism, embrace and celebrate diversity, because our differences make us unique, and our unity makes us strong. We all have a part to play in this. So let's take up the mantle of change, let's stand against racism, and let's celebrate our diversity. After all, it's our differences that make us unique, and our unity that makes us strong.